Okay, students. So today we will discuss about which steps are necessary to conduct systematic literature review. And systematic literature review is very popular in the scientific community, and it requires a lot of effort and a lot of organizational skills as well to conduct a systematic literature review. A systematic review, as sometimes people say systematic review. So yeah, so let's just start our discussion over this. So systematic reviews and meta-analysis are a key element of evidence-based healthcare, yet they remain in some ways mysterious. Why did the authors select certain studies and reject others? What did they do to pool results? And how did a bunch of insignificant findings suddenly become significant? So these are all the questions that you try to cover or you try to answer while going for systematic reviews or meta-analysis. So, uh, actually, this is very popular in medical or healthcare-based studies where you have evidences, and so you try to collect certain facts and you try to approve of them and try to reject others and disapprove them, and how you do it, there is a certain mechanism for that, and how you decide that, why how you decide that certain findings are significant or not. A review earns the adjective systematic if it is based. So systematic is an adjective here in a systematic review, systematic literature review. So any literature review can be systematic if it has following qualities or following attributes. If it is based on a clearly formulated question, identifies relevant studies, appraise their quality, and summarize the evidence by use of explicit methodology. So these are some of the key attributes that should be there if you are trying to convert your or call your review into a systematic literature. So it is explicit and systematic approach that distinguishes systematic reviews from traditional reviews and commentaries. Whenever we use the term review in the paper, it will mean a systematic review. Reviews should never be done in any other way. So, so whenever you try to use the word review, it actually should be the systematic review rather than just a simply review of the papers, and it should not be done in a way because you will not be justifying the topic or review itself. So normally there are 5 steps of conducting a systematic literature review. First one is framing question for review. What is your question? This is one of the most important part. You have to look into certain things, especially whether or not someone previously has done some work on the systematic literature review of the same question. So the second step is identifying relevant work. So this is once you identify the question, then you start identifying the relevant work, and then you start step 3 is assessing the quality of the studies. You should have some criteria to you can have criteria from other studies, systematic reviews, or you can devise your own criteria on the basis of which you try to assess the quality of the studies. Then step 4 is summarizing the evidence. and step 5 is interpreting the findings. So these are 5 steps actually of the systematic data review. It is not just that we are just accumulating some papers and we are just not trying to find anything. So we are always trying to find something, and based on the evidence, we try to interpret the results as well, just like in the normal and usual research article. If we take sample example actually here, I'm taking the example of safety of a public water fluoridation. For example, you are a public health professional in a locality that has public water fluoridation. For many years, your colleagues and you have believed that it improves dental health. Recently, there has been pressure from various interest groups to consider the safety of this public health intervention because they fear that it is causing cancer. Public health decisions have been based on professional judgments and practical feasibility without explicit consideration of the scientific evidence. So normally people go for the personal judgments and practical feasibility to make such decisions. This was yesterday. Today, the evidence is available in York Review, identifiable on Medline through the freely accessible PubMed Clinical Queries interface under systematic reviews. So a lot of literature is published nowadays on these kind of topics, and these studies, you can say, explain explain whether a certain phenomena is happening or not. So we will, after going through that example, which we will address in the subsequent steps, let's go for move towards step 1, which is framing question for a review. The problems to be addressed by the review should be specified in the form of clear, unambiguous, and structured questions before beginning the review work. So this is very important that you should have clear, unambiguous, and structured questions, and which you want to address. Once the review questions have been set, modifications to the protocol should be allowed only if alternative ways of defining the populations, interventions, and outcomes or study designs become apparent. So this is also important that once you have decided that what your review question will be, you should only allow the modification in the protocol if there are alternative ways of defining the population, interventions, outcomes, or study design. So the search question may initially be stated as a query in free form, but reviewers prefer to pose it in structured and explicit way. The relation between various components of the question and the structure of the research design are shown in the figures. Figure will be next. We will focus only on the question of safety related to outcomes described in the figure. So here is the figure. So it can be, question can cover population, interventions, outcomes, and effects. So basically, what the example we have considered of the public water fluoridation. It will be related to fluoridation. Sorry, outcomes of the, you can say, research question. So these are the some of the, you can say, if your question is covering the population, then how it goes down to the you can say how the question flows to the final stage, effects, and so on. So one example of free form question is it safe to provide population-wide drinking water fluoridation to prevent caries? So this is a free form question that that you can, or researcher can float. If we move towards more structured question, for example, the population one, the population receiving drinking water sourced through a public water supply. The intervention of exposures, fluoridation of drinking water, natural, artificial, compared with non-fluoridation water. This is how you pose the question if you are going for interventions or exposures. Then the outcomes, cancer is the main outcome of interest in the debate in your health authority. So this is the outcome of the, you can say, in this question, you actually investigating the outcome of the that particular phenomena. So the study designs as well, comparative studies of any design examining the harmful outcomes in at least two population groups, one with fluoridation drinking water and other without. So if you are comparing the two study designs, so you can do it like that, one which is has the fluoridation water and other that doesn't. Harmful outcomes can be rare and they may develop over a long time. There are considerable difficulties in designing and conducting safety studies to capture these outcomes. Since a large number of people need to be observed over a long period, these circumstances demand observational, non-randomized studies. With this background, systematic reviews on safety have to include evidence from studies with a range of designs. So this is in the case that you want to compare study designs and you want to design your question. You want to frame your question around that. So step 2 is identifying relevant work. The search for studies should be extensive. So this is the step 2, that how you identify the relevant work. The search for studies should be extensive. Multiple sources for the computerized and printed should be searched without the language restriction. The study section criteria should flow directly from the reviews questions and be specified a priori, and reasons for inclusion and exclusion should be recorded. So these are some of the criteria that which studies you are including and from where you are including. Normally people tend to include the studies from digital libraries nowadays, and you should always restrict your research or study selection criteria around the research questions you have, and you also you can say define the reasons for inclusion and exclusion of any study, and you should also record this. Then to capture as many relevant citations as possible, a wide range of medical, environmental, and scientific databases were searched to identify primary studies of the effects of water fluoridation. This is how you will you put when you are sticking to the topic we mentioned. The electronic searches were supplemented by hand searches of Index Medicus and Excerpta Medica back to 1945. Furthermore, various internet engines were searched for web pages that might provide references. This effort resulted in 3 to 4, 6 citations from which relevant studies were selected for the review. So this is how you put the criteria of how you have identified the relevant work, what was the total number of you can say searchable items if you know about that, and what has resulted, what total number of citations have resulted based on your criteria. Their potential relevance was examined and 2511 citations were excluded as irrelevant. So you can see out of 3, 2, 4, 6, 2511 citations were irrelevant. So full paper of the remaining 735 citations were assessed to select those primary studies in man that directly related to fluoride in drinking water supplies and comparing at least 2 groups. So this is how you put that, okay, you have filtered down, you narrowed down your research, and out of all the citations you have narrowed down to 735 citations, and you will now examine it in man in person. These section excluded 481 studies and left 254 in the review. Further, according to your in-person criteria, you will exclude 481 studies from 700 something, 735 citations, and you will be left with 254. They came from 30 countries, published in 14 languages between 1939 and 2000. Of these studies, 175 were relevant to the question of safety, of which 26 26 used cancer as an outcome. So this is how you put extract information according to the research question you have in the systematic review, and you can imagine that in the end you are stick with 175 studies, of which only 26 were reporting cancer as the outcome of the particular process like fluoridation. So this is for now. We will, if you have any question, you can ask. We will discuss the step 3, 4, 5 in the next lecture.